What would you call Orson who traps fish in his net and then releases them back? How would you feel if the only food you have is the fish you catch, but it is released back into the ocean every time you cat? Well, today's story is about a person who is labeled fool for releasing all the fish he catches. Velen wasn't always this way. As a boy, he fished like everyone else, hauled in nets, sold his catch, said nothing when a turtle drowned tangled in rope. Then one monsoon, an old net mender named Pariah showed him something, a heron. Both wings snapped from struggling in an abandoned net for days. Pariah didn't say a word. He just untangled it slowly, for an hour, until it could fly. Velen never forgot the sound it made when it finally lifted off. It started small. Velen began checking abandoned traps on his walks, freeing whatever was caught and shouldn't be. Then he started checking traps that weren't abandoned, traps that belonged to other fishermen. Still working, still full. He told himself he was only freeing what was suffering. But the village started noticing empty nets where full ones had been left the night before. His own brother, Cannon, caught him releasing a full net near the eastern rocks, a net Cannon had set to pay off a debt. The fight that followed split the family for good. "We are not rich enough for your mercy," Cannon told him. "Some of us have children to feed." Velen had no answer. He only knew he couldn't stop his hands once they started untying knots. Word spread through the village faster than any catch. Velen became the fool who empties nets. Fishermen began hiding their traps from him, setting them further out, checking them before dawn so he couldn't reach them first. His own catch dwindled. He was spending his fishing hours freeing other men's fish instead of keeping his own. That winter, Velen's children went hungriest. He found a trap heavy with fish just past his own doorstep, enough to feed his family for a week. He stood over it for a long time. Then he opened it anyway and watched the catch scatter into darkness. His wife didn't speak to him for 3 days. But something else was happening, quietly, that no one, not even Velen, fully understood yet. He'd started noticing where the freed creatures went, which currents the released fish swam toward, which cliffs the freed birds returned to nest on. He began marking it, almost without meaning to, on a torn fishing chart nailed inside his hut, years of a fool's map that nobody else had any reason to keep. Years passed. Velen grew older, poorer, more alone. His children grew up half ashamed of him. The village settled into treating him as background, harmless, pitiable, ignored. He kept releasing what he found. He kept marking his chart. Some nights he wondered if Pariah had been wrong, if mercy was just another word for wasting a life. Then came the year the sky turned wrong in October, the color the oldest fishermen said they'd never seen. The government radio mentioned a storm system far out at sea, nothing urgent. The tides that week began behaving strangely. Fish schools vanishing from their usual banks days early, seabirds abandoning the cliffs overnight. Only one man in the village had spent 11 years quietly recording exactly this kind of pattern. Velen noticed it first, not from any official warning, but from his chart. The same migration shift he tracked twice before, both times preceding a surge his father had once described from decades earlier. He ran through the village at dawn, shouting for people to move their boats and their children to the high ground behind the temple. Most people didn't listen. The fool-crying storm was still just the fool. His brother Cannon was the first to believe him, not because he trusted Velen's judgment, but because he noticed his own nets that morning, set for years in the same spot, had come back completely empty for the first time ever. If even the fish knew to leave, something was wrong. Cannon began moving families to higher ground alongside Velen house by house, faster than anyone thought possible. The surge hit 2 hours before nightfall, a wall of water higher than anyone in 3 generations had seen, tearing through the lower village, where the fish market and half the hut stood. But by then, nearly everyone was on the ridge behind the temple, watching the water take what would have taken them. Velen stood at the front of the crowd, soaked, silent, his torn chart still clutched in one hand. In the months after, the village rebuilt higher up the slope, exactly where Velen had led them. Nobody called him a fool again, not out loud. His brother Cannon hung the old torn chart on the wall of the new fish market, under glass, so no one would forget what 11 years of a man they'd mocked had actually been keeping watch over. Felon still frees what he finds. Nobody stops him anymore. What looked like mercy for its own sake was, all along, the only thing paying close enough attention to save everyone else. Self-reliance isn't always about what you keep, and sometimes it's about being the one person still watching when everyone else stopped. If this story moved you, you know what to do. Like, share, and subscribe for more.